Ambassador Eva Rostova straightened her formal United Earth Confederacy uniform as she stared out the viewport of Aegis 7 Station. The vast, spiraling structure hung in space at the convergence of several major trade routes, its gleaming hull reflecting starlight in dazzling patterns. Despite the station's beauty, Eva felt only a growing knot of anxiety in her stomach. "They're making us wait deliberately," said Commander Jian Li, her military attaché. The tall, wiry officer stood at parade rest, his dark eyes scanning the luxurious diplomatic reception chamber. "Classic dominance tactic." "Undoubtedly," Eva replied, running a hand through her short, silver hair. "The Kthar aren't known for subtlety." As the newest members of the Galactic Concordat, the United Earth Confederacy occupied an uncertain position. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel only 70 years ago, and while their technology had advanced rapidly since first contact, they were still viewed by many established species as upstarts. Physically, humans were unremarkable by galactic standards, lacking the imposing height of the Vorcha, the natural armor of the Taurillians, or the telekinetic abilities of the Mindari. What they lacked in physical advantages, however, they made up for with adaptability and an unsettling capacity to master the technologies of other species. The chamber doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, and Eva steeled herself. High Prelate Zarkin of the Kthar Dominion entered, flanked by heavily armored guards and his ambitious lieutenant, Commander Forlag. The Kthar were imposing reptilians, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with iridescent scales in various shades of blue and green. Bony crests adorned their heads, and their amber eyes featured vertical pupils that seemed perpetually narrowed in disdain. "Ambassador Rostova," Zarkin said, his translator rendering his sibilant language into clipped, formal English. "We have reviewed your proposal." He made the last word sound like a disease. Eva bowed slightly, observing the precise protocols. "High Prelate, we appreciate your consideration. The United Earth Confederacy values this opportunity to resolve our differences peacefully." Zarkin made a dismissive gesture with his four-fingered hand. The ornate rings on each digit caught the light, symbols of conquered worlds added to the dominion over millennia of expansion. The Kthar Empire was ancient, having achieved spacefaring capability when humans were still using bronze tools. Their rigid hierarchical society was built on conquest, their biology and culture both dedicated to dominance. "Your proposal is inadequate," Commander Forlag interjected, his more slender frame and darker scales marking him as a different subspecies from the prelate. "The resources of the Orion Spur are rightfully ours to exploit. Your colonies impede our legitimate expansion." Eva maintained her diplomatic smile, though she felt Jian tense beside her. "With respect, Commander, the Concordat recognized our settlement rights in that region 5 standard years ago. We merely propose a cooperative effort that would benefit both our peoples while respecting established galactic law." Zarkin's crest flared, a sign of irritation. Laws created by weak species to protect themselves from the strong. The Kthar dominated the stars before your kind discovered fire. Yet you joined the Concordat, Eva noted carefully. You recognize the benefits of cooperation. We recognize the convenience of formalities, Zarkin replied, moving to the central table where a holographic display showed the disputed territories. Until they no longer serve our purposes. Eva approached the table, nodding to the alien representatives from other Concordat species who were observing the negotiations. "Then let us find a formality that serves us both, High Prelate." "Surely, enough!" Zarkin suddenly roared, his massive fist slamming down on the table. The holographic display flickered. "Your persistent defiance exhausts my patience, human. Your species is barely out of its cradle, yet you presume to negotiate as equals." The chamber fell silent. Eva felt the eyes of the galactic representatives upon her. This was a critical moment. Show weakness, and humanity's position in the Concordat would be forever diminished. Show too much strength, and they risked escalation. "We negotiate as members of the same Concordat. High Prelate," she said evenly. Equal under its laws, if not in age or power. Zarkin's eyes narrowed to slits. With deliberate slowness, he reached into his ceremonial robes and removed a small crystal sphere, a representation of Earth, Eva realized, given to the Kthar as a goodwill gift during first contact. Your laws mean nothing to us, Zarkin hissed. Then, maintaining eye contact with Eva, he crushed the crystal sphere between his powerful fingers. The sound of shattering crystal echoed through the chamber, a culturally specific Kthar gesture signifying utter contempt. Gasps rose from the alien observers. The guards in the chamber tensed, hands moving to weapons. The Dominion will take what it requires, Zarkin continued, letting the crystal shards fall to the floor. Your arguments are void. Your resistance is futile. Your colonies will submit or be reduced to ash. Eva felt cold fury replace her anxiety. That sounds remarkably like a declaration of war, High Prelate. Zarkin's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of serrated teeth. Congratulations, you just declared war on the most lethal species alive. He bowed mockingly. We'll see how your diplomacy serves you against our battle fleets. As security forces moved to maintain order in the increasingly chaotic chamber, Eva caught Commander Jian's eye. They both understood the gravity of what had just transpired. This was their plan all along, Jian murmured. They never intended to negotiate. No, but they may have just made the greatest miscalculation in their long history. The Kthar offensive began 3 standard days later. The outlying UEC listening post on Demeter 4 detected the approaching warships only minutes before impact. The young lieutenant manning the communications array barely had time to transmit a warning before Kthar bombardment reduced the facility to molten slag. Similar attacks struck 6 other human outposts simultaneously, a coordinated strike designed to blind humanity's early warning network. In the opulent war room of the Kthar flagship Inevitable Conquest, High Prelate Zarkin observed the holographic battle maps with satisfaction. The primitives offer no meaningful resistance, Commander Forlag reported, his scales gleaming under the harsh lighting. Their armor is standard composite. Their weapon yields precisely as our intelligence suggested. Nothing remarkable. As expected, Zarkin replied, gesturing to the display showing Kthar forces advancing into human territory. Their brief ascension ends now. We will have the Orion Spur secured within 30 cycles. Their major colonies subjugated within 60. And Earth itself? Forlag inquired, his ambitious nature evident in the eagerness of his voice. A demonstration will be required, Zarkin said contemplatively. Something to ensure no human resistance persists. Perhaps we will keep their homeworld intact, but sterilize its biosphere. A fitting monument to those who would challenge the Dominion. Across human space, the initial shock of the Kthar attacks quickly transformed into something the overconfident reptilians had not anticipated. Cold, unified resolve. The UEC Parliament on Earth convened an emergency session, invoking wartime powers not used since the unification wars that had finally ended Earth's internal conflicts 50 years earlier. Military reserves were activated. Civilian ships were requisitioned for evacuation and supply duties, and dormant defense installations, built quietly as a contingency despite the optimism of the Concordat era, hum to life. They think us weak because we value peace, President Chen Wei told the grim-faced assembly. They mistake diplomacy for cowardice, restraint for inability. They do not understand what they have awakened. Humanity had spent much of its history fighting itself. The horrors of conventional, nuclear, and biological warfare were not ancient history, but living memory. The scarred Earth had healed under a unified government only after coming to the brink of self-annihilation. This brutal past was not something humans celebrated, but in the face of the Kthar threat, it became a grim resource, a well of knowledge about warfare that ran soul-achingly deep. On Gliese Prime, the third human colony established beyond Sol and home to over 5 million settlers, the Kthar expected swift capitulation when their invasion force landed. The Colonial Defense Force was outnumbered 10-1, with inferior weapons and no heavy armor. By all conventional metrics, resistance was futile. The Cathar commanders were therefore confused when the main settlement appeared evacuated upon their arrival. The confusion turned to alarm when the elaborate tunnel systems beneath the colony became death traps, rigged with improvised explosives, localized EMP devices that disabled Cathar armor systems, and guerrilla fighters who appeared and disappeared with unsettling speed. They're not fighting according to any recognizable doctrine, a frustrated Cathar field commander reported to High Command. They abandon valuable infrastructure rather than defend it conventionally. They seed their retreat with devices that specifically target our sensory advantages. Their civilians appear to be assisting military operations. Similar reports began filtering in from other occupied territories. Cathar casualties, while not devastating, were running at 300% of projected rates. Victory was still certain, but the price was inexplicably high. High Command dismissed these concerns as field commander incompetence. The Cathar war machine pressed on, confident in its superiority. Then came the incident that earned the name Whispering Death. A Cathar patrol fleet detected a damaged human frigate fleeing the Procyon system. Following standard doctrine, they pursued, expecting to add another easy kill to their tally. The human vessel, leaking radiation and with visibly disabled weapons systems, limped into a dense asteroid field. The Cathar ships followed, activating their advanced sensors to track the vessel through the debris. What the Cathar didn't realize was that the asteroids had been prepared weeks earlier, hollowed out and filled with thousands of small, adaptive drones equipped with minimal power signatures and kinetic penetrators designed specifically to breach Cathar hull configurations. As the patrol fleet moved deeper into the field, the human frigate suddenly accelerated, its damage revealed as a deception. The drones activated simultaneously, swarming the Cathar vessels from all directions. With minimal energy signatures, they barely registered on sensors until impact. One by one, the Cathar ships were crippled or destroyed. The final transmission from the Cathar commander described silent projectiles appearing from nowhere before communications ceased. The human frigate then detonated its core, destroying itself and any evidence of the trap mechanism. On the Cathar homeworld, a junior intelligence analyst named Screeth reviewed the incident with growing concern. As a specialist in primitive warfare techniques, Screeth recognized patterns in human resistance that disturbed him deeply. They're displaying classic predator adaptation, he reported to his superiors. Rapid tactical evolution, willingness to sacrifice assets for strategic gain, exploitation of environmental factors. These behaviors are reminiscent of extinct apex hunters from our evolutionary past. His warnings were met with derision. They are mammals, his supervisor scoffed. Soft-skinned, short-lived creatures without natural weapons. Their technology is borrowed, their tactics desperate. They simply delay the inevitable. Screeth persisted. The historical record shows other species demonstrated similar resistance before extinction. In every case, we underestimated their capacity for enough. Commander Forlag himself had entered the intelligence chamber, his presence causing the analysts to bow deeply. Your assessment borders on species treason, Analyst Screeth. The High Prelate would find your admiration for these primitives disturbing. Not admiration, Commander, Screeth replied carefully. Caution. Forlag's eyes narrowed. Return to your duties. Leave strategy to your betters. As he left, he added, and purge these disrespectful assessments from the record. Screeth obeyed, but copied his findings to a private data store. Something told him they might prove relevant sooner than his superiors believed. As the conflict entered its second month, the UEC unveiled technologies that shocked the Cathar analysts. Human ships previously designated as civilian transports revealed hidden weapon systems. New vessels appeared with hull configurations that seemed specifically designed to counter Cathar targeting systems. Most disturbing, captured Cathar technology was not merely being studied. It was being modified, improved, and deployed against its creators with unsettling speed. Their industrial adaptation rate exceeds all projections, reported the Kthar Fleet Intelligence Officer. They've integrated our shield harmonics into countermeasures that bypass our defenses, and they're deploying previously unknown weapons, graviton pulse torpedoes that create localized distortions to breach our hulls regardless of armor thickness. Zarkin's crest flattened against his skull, a sign of deepening concern. How are they achieving this? Their technological base should not support such innovation rates. Unknown, high prelate. But there's worse. Our ground forces report that human colonies we believe pacified have become increasingly hostile environments. They call it the bleeding. The bleeding was an apt description for the constant attrition faced by Kthar occupation forces. Supply convoys disappeared. Command centers suffered unexplained system failures. High-ranking officers were found assassinated in supposedly secure areas. The humans had formed special operations units, nicknamed Ghosts by grateful colonists, that seemed capable of infiltrating any Kthar facility, evading the reptilians' heightened senses and striking with surgical precision. More disturbing was the discovery that human civilian networks were thoroughly integrated into these resistance operations. Children served as lookouts. Medical facilities doubled as intelligence hubs. Religious leaders coordinated supply. Caches. The entire human social structure seemed to transform effortlessly into a warfare support system. The Kthar, with their rigid hierarchical thinking, couldn't comprehend a species that operated so fluidly without clear command structures. They responded with increasing brutality, public executions, hostage-taking, and collective punishment, only to find that these tactics, so effective against other conquered species, seemed to intensify human resistance rather than suppress it. Meanwhile, in space, the humans had adopted what they called the persistence doctrine. Unlike the Kthar fleet, which operated on standard patrol rotations with regular crew rest and ship maintenance periods, human vessels remained deployed for months at a time. They used rotating skeleton crews, minimal life support in unused ship sections, and stimulants to maintain constant pressure on Kthar forces. A Kthar commander might fight off a human attack, only to have the same vessels return 20 hours later. No retreat, no recovery, just relentless harassment. They don't stop. A Kthar ship captain complained during a rare secure communication with his clutchmate. We destroy their attack craft, and they send shuttles as battering rams. We adapt our shields, and they switch to projectile weapons. We jam their communications, and they seem to operate on prearranged protocols. It's like fighting an enemy that doesn't need to think or rest. Throughout the wider galaxy, reactions to the conflict were mixed. Several concordat species, long chafing under Kthar influence, provided covert support to the humans. Intelligence, medical supplies, and occasionally decommissioned military hardware that somehow ended up in UEC hands. Others, particularly those with rigid ethical codes, condemned the humans for what they viewed as barbaric, asymmetric warfare that violated the civilized conduct expected of Concordat members. The Kthar diplomatic corps worked tirelessly to maintain the narrative that this was merely a policing action against an upstart species that had overstepped its bounds. But as the conflict dragged on and casualty reports filtered through various channels, this narrative became increasingly difficult to sustain. 3 months into the war, with their advance stalled and their occupation forces bleeding resources, the Kthar High Command convened an emergency strategy session. Commander Forlag, whose star had risen as more senior leaders failed to deliver victories, presented his recommendation. "We have been fighting with unnecessary restraint," he declared, his ambitious eyes fixed on Zarkin. "These mammals understand only force. I propose deploying our full arsenal, orbital bombardment of resistant colonies, deploying the biological weapons we've preserved from the Mindari subjugation." Zarkin's crest pulsed with uncertainty. The Concordat expressly forbids such measures. "The diplomatic consequences will be managed," Forlag interrupted, earning gasps from the other commanders at his breach of protocol. Better to ask forgiveness once the humans are subjugated than to suffer a protracted conflict that erodes are standing regardless. Victory justifies all methods, as the first emperor decreed. The ancient quotation had the desired effect. Zarkin's crest extended fully, a sign of pride. Implement your strategy, Commander Forlag. Show these humans the true meaning of war against the Dominion. The escalation was swift and terrible. 3 resistant human colonies suffered orbital bombardment that reduced major cities to ash. On New Terra, the Cthar deployed an engineered virus that targeted human respiratory systems. 500,000 colonists died, gasping before UEC medical ships could deploy countermeasures. Rather than breaking human resolve, these atrocities crystallized it. The UEC Parliament unanimously passed the Survival Authorization Act, removing virtually all ethical restrictions on military research and deployment. Earth's industrial centers, many built inside hollowed-out mountains to survive the unification wars, ramped up production to levels that strained the planet's resources. The outer colonies implemented a scorched earth protocol. Anything that couldn't be defended was destroyed to prevent Cthar acquisition. Most significantly, the UEC revealed the existence of an artificial intelligence project codenamed Chimera. Developed in secret before the war due to Concordat restrictions on autonomous combat systems, Chimera was a distributed military intelligence designed to coordinate humanity's fragmented forces into a unified defense web. Now fully deployed, it began analyzing Cthar tactics in real time, predicting movements with uncanny accuracy and directing human forces to exploit weaknesses faster than organic commanders could have identified them. "We're fighting a machine," Commander Forlag realized as another carefully planned assault dissolved into chaos under seemingly prescient human counterattacks. His ambitious dreams of glory faded as reports of defeats multiplied across all fronts. Zarkin, watching his once certain victory transform into a grueling stalemate, became increasingly erratic. "We cannot lose to these primitives," he hissed during a strategy session. "The Dominion has never known defeat in its 15,000 years. The conflict can still be resolved through negotiation," suggested an elder counselor, earning Zarkin's immediate fury. "Negotiation? With mammals? I would sooner mate with a Vorcha." The High Prelate turned to Forlag. "We must strike at their heart. Prepare the Grand Armada. We will attack Earth itself and cut out the brain of this insolent species." Forlag's crest extended with excitement. This was the opportunity he had awaited: command of the largest Cthar fleet ever assembled, with the goal of delivering a historic victory. "It shall be done, High Prelate. Operation Anvil will commence within the month." The Cthar Grand Armada represented the largest concentration of military power seen in the galaxy for millennia. Ships were recalled from throughout the Dominion's vast territory, leaving some regions virtually undefended. Ancient dreadnoughts were recommissioned, their planet-killing weapons reactivated. The Cthar species committed its full might to ending humanity once and for all. On Earth, Ambassador Rostova, now serving as strategic coordinator for extrasolar defense, received the intelligence with grim satisfaction. "They're doing exactly what we predicted," she told the UEC Security Council, "concentrating their forces for a decapitation strike." "And we're ready?" asked President Wei. Commander Jin Li, now Admiral of the UEC Defense Fleet, nodded. "Project Chimera has run over 12 million simulations. The Sol defense grid is complete. Our fleet is positioned according to the optimal dispersal pattern. Then all that remains is to spring the trap," Rostova said. "And God help us all." The Sol defense grid represented humanity's greatest secret, a multi-layered defensive system built over decades, disguised as civilian infrastructure or hidden through advanced cloaking technology. The officially acknowledged UEC home fleet was merely its most visible component, deliberately maintained at a size that would seem challenging but ultimately defeatable to the Cthar. What the Cthar intelligence had failed to detect were the thousands of automated defense platforms embedded in the asteroid belt. The repurposed mining rigs equipped with mass drivers that could accelerate chunks of metal to relativistic speeds, the network of quantum-entangled minds that could be triggered in patterns unpredictable to even the most advanced targeting systems, and the swarms of autonomous drones housed in seemingly derelict orbital stations. At the heart of this defensive web was Earth itself, now encased in overlapping shield generators and bristling with weapon emplacements disguised as commercial satellites or communications arrays. The moon, its far side hollowed by centuries of mining, had been transformed into an enormous missile platform capable of launching thousands of warheads simultaneously. Most significantly, every component of this defense system was coordinated by Chimera, the AI that had studied Cthar tactics for months and developed countermeasures for every documented strategy in the Dominion's long military history. As the Cthar Grand Armada approached Seoul, Forlag stood proudly on the command deck of his flagship, the World Render. "We detect the human defense fleet adjusting position to intercept," reported his tactical officer. "Their formation is standard, protecting approach vectors to the third planet." Forlag's crest extended in anticipation. Exactly as expected. They hope to wear us down through conventional engagement before we reach their homeworld, target their command vessels first, then methodically eliminate their fleet. I want Earth to witness the destruction of their last defense before we commence orbital bombardment. The Cthar fleet surged forward, weapons charging, confident in their overwhelming numerical and technological advantage. The human fleet appeared to respond conventionally, moving to intercept along predictable vectors. Then everything changed. The first indication that this would not be a standard space battle came when the leading edge of the Cthar formation suddenly encountered massive gravitational distortions. Ships were pulled off course, smashing into each other as space itself seemed to warp around them. "Gravitational mines!" shouted the tactical officer. "They've seeded the approach with singularity generators." Before Forlag could order evasive action, the supposedly empty space around the Armada erupted with weapons fire from previously undetected platforms. Simultaneously, the human fleet executed a maneuver that Cthar naval doctrine considered suicidal, disaggregating into smaller units that accelerated directly into the heart of the Cthar formation, targeting command ships with shocking precision. "They're inside our operational envelope," screamed the tactical officer as alarms blared across the command deck. Multiple breaches on decks 5 through 19. Forlag stared in disbelief at the tactical display. The carefully ordered Cthar battle plan was dissolving into chaos. Human vessels, some apparently civilian craft retrofitted with weapons, swarmed as capital ships like insects, too numerous and too close for the Cthar's heavy weapons to target effectively. Meanwhile, the automated defenses hidden throughout the system poured fire into his fleet from every direction. "Where are they all coming from?" he demanded, his crest flattening in distress. "Our intelligence identified every military asset in the system." "Sir," reported a communications officer, "we're detecting thousands of small craft launching from Luna and the asteroid belt. And the human vessels are being controlled with inhuman precision. We believe they're using an artificial combat intelligence." Forlag's blood ran cold. The Dominion had abandoned AI research millennia ago after a catastrophic incident that had sterilized 3 core worlds. That humans would embrace such technology confirmed his worst fears about their reckless nature. As the battle raged throughout the Sol system, a much smaller drama unfolded at the periphery. A seemingly derelict Cthar shuttle, damaged in the initial exchange, drifted toward Forlag's flagship. Its transponder identified it as the Relentless, a scout vessel presumed destroyed earlier in the war. Inside the shuttle, Admiral Jian Li and a team of ghost operatives made final preparations. Biometric maskers activated, reported Lieutenant Kovacs, her face barely visible beneath adaptive camouflage. "Une signature semble fonctionning." They read us as debris. "Good," Jian replied, checking his modified pulse rifle. "Remember, our primary objective is their command and control center. Secondary is Forlag himself. Time is critical. We need to complete the mission before they realize the full extent of our defense capabilities. The shuttle's automated systems guided it toward an emergency docking port on the World Render's underside. As they approached, Jin thought of Eva Rostova back on Earth, coordinating the larger battle. Their plan had been years in the making, a gamble of unprecedented scale. Now its success depended on his small team infiltrating the most heavily defended Cathar vessel ever constructed. For Earth, he murmured as the docking clamps engaged. For all of us. On the command deck of the World Render, Forlag watched with growing horror as his grand armada disintegrated under the human onslaught. Ships he had personally commanded for decades were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The intricate formations that Cathar naval doctrine deemed invincible were penetrated, divided, and systematically destroyed by an enemy fighting with impossible coordination. "We've lost 60% of our capital ships," reported his second-in-command, scales pale with shock. "The lunar defense platforms are launching a new wave of missiles. Our point defenses are overwhelmed." Forlag's mind raced. This could not be happening. The Dominion could not fall to mammals, to primitives barely out of their gravity well. It was unthinkable, an abomination against the natural order. "Sir," his security chief interrupted, "we have intruders. Multiple decks report human infiltrators moving toward the Central Command Core." Something broke in Forlag's mind. Rage and fear merged into a terrible resolution. If the Dominion could not have victory, then no one would. He turned to his most loyal officer. "Prepare the Nova device." The officer's crest flattened in shock. "Sir, that's a planet killer. If detonated this close to their star." "I know precisely what it will do," Forlag hissed. "The humans wish to protect their world. Let them watch as their entire system is purged of life. The Dominion may fall, but we will not fall alone." Deep within the World Render, Jin's team fought their way through increasingly desperate Cathar resistance. Their adaptive camouflage and sound suppression technology gave them an initial advantage. But as alarms spread throughout the ship, they faced growing numbers of defenders. "They're redirecting troops from the outer hull defense," Lieutenant Kovacs reported, checking sensor readings between firefights. "They know we're here." "That's part of the plan," Jin replied grimly. "Keep moving." After battling through 3 security checkpoints, they reached a massive doorway marked with Cathar warning symbols. "This is it," said their xenolinguistic specialist. "Command Core access. But these doors are genetically locked to Cathar physiology." Jin smiled thinly. "Fortunately, we brought the key." He nodded to a containment unit carried by another team member. Inside was a severed Cathar hand, preserved from an earlier battle. Not elegant, but effective, the macabre key worked. As the door slid open, they faced a cavernous chamber dominated by a holographic display of the battle, now showing the systematic destruction of the Cathar fleet. At the center stood Commander Forlag, his scales flushed with rage as he worked at a crystalline control panel. "Nova's sequence initiated," announced an automated voice in the Cathar language. "Core destabilization commencing." "Stop him," Jin shouted, raising his weapon. Cathar guards opened fire, forcing the human team into cover. Forlag continued his work at the panel, mandibles spread in a grimace of dark satisfaction. "Too late, mammals," he called out in heavily accented English. "Your victory will be ash in your mouths. The Nova device will destabilize your star, triggering a premature Nova event. Your precious Earth will be sterilized, along with every world in this system. A fitting end to our ancient rivalry." Meanwhile, on Earth, Eva Rostova monitored the battle from the strategic command center buried beneath the Himalayas. Chimera had just reported the infiltration team's progress when a new alert flared on her display. "Energy buildup detected on the Cathar flagship," reported a pale-faced technician. "Patterns match theoretical models for stellar destabilization." "They're going to destroy the sun," Eva whispered, horrified. Then, collecting herself, Chimera, access all communication channels, including Cathar frequencies. Broadcast system-wide on all bands. Her image appeared on communication screens throughout human and Cathar vessels alike. Even as their ships exploded around them, Kthar commanders paused to witness her message. "Attention all Kthar forces," Eva began, her voice steady despite the stakes. "Your commander Forlag has activated a Nova device, intending to destroy not only Earth, but all Kthar ships remaining in the Sol system. He has deemed your lives expendable in his quest for vengeance. We offer immediate ceasefire and safe passage to any Kthar vessel that withdraws from combat operations. Save yourselves from your commander's madness." Aboard the World Render, Kthar officers exchanged shocked glances as Eva's message played. The concept that a commanding officer would sacrifice his own forces was anathema to their hierarchical but communally minded psychology. Jin seized the moment of confusion to make his move. Vaulting from cover, he charged Forlag, dodging energy bolts. The Kthar commander, seeing him approach, abandoned the control panel and drew a ceremonial blade from his armor. "You are too late," Forlag hissed. "The sequence is locked." "Maybe," Jin replied, drawing his own combat knife. "But you won't live to see it." The two commanders clashed in the center of the command deck, reptilian strength against human agility. Forlag's blade slashed Jin's armor, drawing blood, but the human's combat style was unlike anything the Kthar had trained for. Unpredictable, adaptive, exploiting the reptilian's blind spots and leveraging his greater mass against him. As they fought, Lieutenant Kovacs reached the control panel. "Sir, I can't stop the sequence. The controls are locked out." "Secondary protocol," Jin grunted, narrowly avoiding Forlag's blade. "Chimera, execute override Omega." Through his neural link, the AI acknowledged the command. Throughout the ship, systems began to malfunction as Chimera, which had infiltrated the Kthar computer network through previously captured vessels, executed its contingency protocol. Forlag realized what was happening too late. "No!" he screamed, lunging desperately at Jin. The human sidestepped the charge, using the Kthar's momentum to drive his knife deep into the base of Forlag's skull, severing the connection between brain and body. The massive reptilian collapsed, twitching. Nova's sequence aborted, announced the ship's computer in Kthar, then repeated it in English. Chimera's handiwork. System reset initiated. Across the solar system, the remaining Kthar vessels, witnessing their commander's defeat and learning of his willingness to sacrifice them, began powering down weapons. Some fled immediately, jumping to hyperspace with battle damage still venting atmosphere. Others formally surrendered, their captains unwilling to die for a lost cause. The Battle of Sol ended not with a final cataclysmic exchange, but with a cascading wave of Kthar capitulations. In the aftermath, humanity found itself in a transformed galactic position. The Kthar Dominion, its military shattered and its leadership in chaos, splintered into competing factions. Subject species seized the opportunity to declare independence, while Kthar colony worlds found themselves isolated and vulnerable. High Prelate Zarkin did not survive the collapse. Whether assassinated by ambitious underlings or killed by revolutionaries remained uncertain, but his 15,000-year-old empire crumbled within months of his demise. The human cost had been immense. Over 3 billion dead across a dozen colonies, ecosystems damaged beyond recovery on multiple worlds, and a generation scarred by warfare on a scale not seen since Earth's darkest days. Yet humanity had survived, preserving its homeworld and its identity. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the Galactic Concordat convened an emergency assembly to address the power vacuum left by the Kthar collapse. The Grand Chamber, once dominated by the imposing presence of Kthar representatives, now felt strangely empty. Ambassador Eva Rostova, now bearing the additional title of Minister for Galactic Affairs, took the podium. The assembled representatives fell silent, many viewing her with a mixture of respect and fear. Humanity's devastating effectiveness in warfare had shocked the galaxy, forcing a re-evaluation of the seemingly unremarkable mammals. Fellow members of the Concordat, Eva began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We stand at a crossroads. The Kthar Dominion, which maintained stability, albeit through oppression, for millennia, is no more. Now we must decide what will replace it. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Many expected humanity to assert dominance, to claim the Cthar territories as spoils of war. Some feared another empire would simply replace the old, with humans as the new conquerors. Humanity did not fight for conquest, Eva continued. We fought for survival. And in that desperate struggle, we were reminded of our own dark history, the capacity for violence that nearly destroyed us before we unified our world. We have no desire to become the monster we defeated. The representatives shifted uncomfortably. This was not the typical rhetoric of a victorious power. Therefore, the United Earth Confederacy proposes not occupation of former Cthar worlds, but a mutual defense treaty among all Concordat members. We will share our defensive technologies with appropriate safeguards and help establish a rapid response force to prevent any single species from ever again threatening galactic stability. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The voluntary sharing of military technology was unprecedented, particularly from a species with such recently demonstrated superiority. Furthermore, Eva added, we will assist the former subject species of the Dominion in establishing self-governance if they wish it, or in joining the Concordat as independent members. The age of empires must end if we are to build a truly stable peace. As Eva outlined the details of the human proposal, Admiral Jien Li watched from the diplomatic gallery, his arm still in a medical brace from his battle with Forlag. Beside him sat the Cthar analyst Screeth, now serving as representative for a coalition of moderate Cthar worlds seeking reconciliation. Your species continues to surprise us, Screeth said quietly. Victory without vengeance. Power without domination. These are unfamiliar concepts to my kind. They were unfamiliar to humans once too, Jien replied. We learned their value the hard way by nearly destroying ourselves. Perhaps that's an advantage of being primitive. We remember our mistakes because they're still fresh in our history. On the view screens throughout the chamber, statistics and projections displayed the human plan for galactic reconstruction. The cost would be enormous, requiring contributions from all Concordat members. The political complexities of transitioning dozens of formerly subjugated worlds to independence would take decades to fully resolve. It won't be easy, Eva acknowledged as she concluded her address. Nothing worthwhile ever is. But we have a unique opportunity to build something better than what came before. The Cthar believed might determined right, that the strong should dominate the weak. We propose a different principle, that diversity creates resilience, that cooperation yields greater strength than conquest. She paused, surveying the chamber filled with representatives of species that had evolved on countless different worlds, each with their own biology, psychology, and history. The Cthar were wrong about many things, Eva said finally. But perhaps their greatest error was the message Prelate Zarkin delivered so mockingly at the start of this conflict. He was correct that they had declared war on the most lethal species alive, but not for the reasons he believed. The chamber was completely silent now, hundreds of alien eyes fixed on a human ambassador. Humanity is lethal not because we possess natural weapons or overwhelming strength, but because we adapt. We learn. We cooperate in the face of threats. We transform our weakness into strength. And most dangerously, we recognize that the same capacity for violence that makes us fearsome. In war is a demon we must constantly keep caged in peace. Eva straightened, her voice firm and clear. The United Earth Confederacy stands ready to defend any member of this Concordat from aggression. We will not initiate conflict. We will not seek dominion. But neither will we ever again allow our people or our allies to face destruction. This is our solemn commitment, now and for all the generations to come. The silence that followed lasted only moments before it was broken by the sound of Screeth rising to his feet. The Cthar representative's gesture, standing for a speaker of another species, violated millennia of his people's protocol. One by one, other representatives stood as well, until the entire assembly was on their feet. No applause followed. Many species present had no hands to clap. Others expressed approval in culturally specific ways, but the message was clear. The proposal would pass. A new era had begun. Later that evening, in a quiet observation lounge overlooking Earth, Eva found Jian staring at the blue-green planet below. "Not a bad view," she said, joining him. "Worth fighting for." "Worth more than fighting for," he replied. "Worth building something better for." He turned to face her. "The Concordat approved your proposal. The Reconstruction Fund is already being established." Eva nodded. "It's only the beginning. We have a generation of children who know only war. Former Cthar subject species who may not trust any powerful centralized authority. Cthar factions still resistant to the new order. The real work starts now. Are you worried we'll fail?" Jian asked. Eva considered the question, watching a weather system swirl across the Pacific Ocean far below. "No, we'll make mistakes. We'll face setbacks. But we've proven what we're capable of when united by a common purpose. The question isn't whether we can succeed. It's what kind of success we create." Jian smiled slightly. "From primitive mammals to architects of a new galactic order. Not bad for a species barely out of its gravity well." "Maybe that's our greatest strength," Eva replied. "We're young enough to believe change is possible, old enough to know the price of failure, and adaptable enough to learn from everyone around us." She gestured to the stars visible beyond Earth's atmosphere. Out there are species with histories tens of thousands of years longer than ours. Technologies we're still struggling to comprehend. Philosophies developed over millennia. What might we become if we approach all that with humility instead of conquest? The question hung between them, unanswerable but full of possibility. Across the recovering Earth and throughout the surviving human colonies, a similar sentiment was taking hold. The war had revealed humanity's capacity for both terrible violence and extraordinary unity. The question now was how to harness the latter while keeping the former firmly in check. In a classroom on New Terra, rebuilt after the Cthar bombardment, a teacher posed a question to her students. "What do you think makes humans different from Cthar?" A young girl raised her hand. "The Cthar thought being the strongest meant they should rule everyone else. We proved we could be strong too, but we're choosing not to rule." "That's an excellent observation, May," the teacher said. "The true test of strength isn't what you can take from others. It's what you can build together." On the former Cthar throne world of Dominax, now hosting a conference of species formerly subjugated under the Dominion, Screeth addressed a wary audience. "Our civilization was built on a foundation of biological superiority," the Cthar representative acknowledged. "We believed our natural weapons, our sensory advantages, our longevity gave us the right to rule. The humans demonstrated that true strength lies not in the body one is born with, but in the mind that adapts, the heart that perseveres, and the hands that build rather than destroy." In the revered Hall of Emperors, where statues of Cthar rulers stretched back 15 millennia, workers carefully installed a new monument. Not a conquering figure, but a simple plaque bearing the words, "Power without wisdom destroys itself. Victory without mercy creates its own defeat. May we learn from those we once dismissed." 10 years after the war's end, a joint human-Cathar research team made a breakthrough in gravitational field manipulation that revolutionized interstellar travel. 15 years later, a coalition of formerly warring species developed medical technologies that extended quality of life for dozens of sentient species. 20 years on, the Concordat established the first truly multi-species colonies, where biological differences became strengths rather than divisions. Some conflicts emerged, as they always do when different peoples interact. Some ancient hatreds proved difficult to overcome. Not every world chose to join the new galactic community. But the pattern had been set: cooperation over conquest, diversity over dominance, adaptation over annihilation. In the historical archives of 1,000 worlds, the Cthar-Human War was recorded as the end of the age of empires and the beginning of the Concordat era. And though few remembered the exact words Zarkin had spoken at the war's beginning, the irony of his declaration remained. He had indeed declared war on the most lethal species alive, not because humans were the strongest or the most aggressive, but because they had perfected the most powerful adaptation of all, the ability to turn enemies into allies, to learn from defeat, and to choose a different path when victory was within their grasp. The capacity not just to survive, but to help others thrive alongside them. The power to build rather than merely destroy. The wisdom to know the difference.